In the last video, we created admin panel for our e-commerce application, and in that we created the component for the category. And in this video, we are going to talk about and create the subcategory component, because subcategory is bit different than the category. So in this video, we are going to create the CRUD operation for the subcategory. Hey everyone, this is Kamran and I'm a full stack web developer. And in this video series, I'm teaching how you can create an e-commerce application in mean stack development. So if you are new here, I would suggest you to hit the subscribe button and also the like button of this video. That will help me to grow as a YouTuber and reach more people. So let's talk about subcategory now. So how does the subcategory is bit different than the category? So category is an independent entity. So you can create category and you don't have to pass any reference to it. But for subcategory, you have to pass the reference of a category. So that is a small difference for this subcategory. So for each category, there will be different subcategories. So we can say that each subcategory will belong to some category. So we have to add a category ID on each of these subcategories. So first I'm going to create the exact replica of the category component for this subcategory component, and then I'm going to make some changes. So here you can see that I have already created a replica of the category component, and which I'm using in this subcategory component. Now let's make the changes in the subcategory component. So for the subcategory, first what we have to do, first we have to show the list of categories at the top, and from this category list we will select a particular category, and then we are going to show the subcategory of that particular category only. So this is our subcategory component. So first thing which I'm going to do is to update this category to subcategory. So here at the top, I'm going to add a drop down first, and in that drop down, I'm going to show the list of the categories to select. So let's do that. So for that, first I'm going to import the drop down module from the Angular material, and I'm going to use that in this. Same as other components, first we are going to import the module for the select in our application. So let's import that mat select module in our module imports, and then I'm going to use that. So in this HTML file, we can just simply put our select over here, and in this I'm going to say this will be the list of category. So let's replace this with category, and here I have to pass the categories. And now this is the time to define these categories in the TS file. So let's first create a variable for this, and for this also we can create an interface can be same for categories and subcategory. I can just replicate it, and then I'm gonna pass this over here, and this will be an empty for by default, and then I'm going to make an API call to get these subcategories, right? So let's do that. I can simply use the get categories list service and get the list of categories over here. So instead of getting the subcategories, I'm going to get the categories first. So let's define a method for that first, and I'm going to use this, and I can simply copy paste the whole thing, and I can update the variable as well, and just I have to make sure that I'm calling the correct service. So let's do that. So this service is not imported. Let's import this first. And once you import this service, just replace this method as well. So this will be get category list. And once I get the category, as we are already using this API in the category component, this will work fine, I'm sure. And this categories will be listed on this, and this will be shown in this categories. So fun thing which we have to do over here is to replace this food as well. So let's do that category, and we have to show the category dot name, right? So let's do that. This will be name, and the value can also be name. So now we are ready, and we are going to make this call. So let's see the output. So once I get this categories, then I'm going to make a call in this get subcategory list and get the subcategory for any particular category. So in the output, you can see that once I click on this drop down, I get all the list of this category over here. But this category is not looking good over here. I will move this to the left hand side. And how we can do that? Let's do some changes in CSS for that. So instead of this subcategory add button, I'm going to replace this with header, which will be a better class for this. So, and I'm going to add this in our CSS, and this class will be button, because this is a button, right? So we will do that, and on this button I'm going to wrap this in the header, and then and here in the subcategory header I'm going to add the css of display flags. So let's do that, and flags direction will be row, because we have to show them in a row, right? So let's do row over here, and in this I have to pass the justify content, and that will be space between, because we have to keep the space in between the elements, and both the elements will be pushed to the extreme right and left. And so with that I can just remove this float right. And now what we have to do, we have to fix this selected category. So whenever will be a change in the selected category, there will be an API call which will make the API call to get the subcategory for that particular category. So first let's create a new variable selected category, which will hold that which category is selected by default or at a time, right? So let's do that. So the selected categories we can update over here, and here we have to check first whether in the category we have anything or not. So once this have some length, that means there are some categories in this API, and then once we get a single category, then that category we can update in our selected category, right? So let's do that. So this categories, and this will be 0, and this will be the name of that category, right? So we have to append the name. So once you do this, the first value from the category list will be selected by default, and this selected categories you have to pass this in the value of this drop down. For selecting a by default value, we have to pass the value in this match select. So we will do that, and here I'm just going to say value, and this will be updated by the selected value, sorry, inside this. Once I do this, the default value of this match select will be selected category, which will be the first category from the categories list. So here now you can see that the by default clothing is selected. So if we are by default selecting some category, then we can make the API call for that by default, right? So let's do that. So this dot get subcategories. So now I have to pass the ID of this category to this get subcategory method. So let's do that. So this will be this dot categories of 0 dot ID, and this we can pass to this method, and here I have to catch this ID, which will be a number mostly, and this ID I have to pass to this service. So let's open this method first, and from here we have to pass this ID, and so in this method as well I will get this ID, which will be a number, and then I have to pass this ID to this API. So you have to keep in mind that you have to now make a new API in this, in which it will take a category ID and will return the list of subcategories. So that will be category ID is equals to, and plus you have to pass this ID over here, or you can rename this to category ID itself. That will make it clear. So this will be a category ID, and this will also be a category ID. So make sure this list, or you can rename this to category list, and you have to make sure this API present in your backend, so that will return the list of subcategories for this particular category. So here we can make a small change. Instead of passing this ID to this method, what we can do, we can update this ID to some variable and then pass this variable to that. So let's do that. So I will create a new variable selected category ID, and this will be the ID of the selected category, and let's instantiate or define this as well. So here I can define category ID, and that will be a number, and by default we can keep it 0. So now I don't have to pass this ID in this method. Instead of this, I can just simply pass here this dot selected category ID. So now in order to add the category in ID in while creating a subcategory, we are going to pass this categories list to the add subcategory modal. So this is where we are opening the add category subcategory modal. Then in this we are going to pass the categories list, because we have to show this list in the add as well, and then we can choose where we have to add that subcategory, right? So let's do that. So here we can pass the data, which we can keep as categories, and this categories will be this dot categories. And now we will open this add category model component. So in this add category dialog, we just have to inject that data, right? So let's do that, and this I can replace with any for now, and this any, and then I can use this data which will be our categories, right? So let's do that. So in on init method, I can simply update my this dot categories with this data, and I can define this dot categories over here. Now we have this categories over here, and we are going to show that drop down in this as well. So I can simply copy paste this drop down in our form. So I'm just gonna copy this from here, and I'm going to add in our this form. So after giving the ID, we have to select the category, and this selected category we have to define our TS. So let's open this and define the selected over here. So this can be string, and this will be an empty string by default. But in this add category, whenever we are going to change the drop down, we have to call a method and update the category ID as well. So let's do that. So for that, first I'm going to define a selected category ID, and this will be a number which we can keep 0 by default. So whenever we are going to change this selection, we are going to call a method. So let's add a trigger for that, and that will be selection change, and here I can say category change, and this I will define in our TS file. Let's define this, and once I define this, I have to pass an event in this, right? So let's pass a event, and this will be value, and then I have to define this in the TS file. Let's do that. So whenever I'm going to make the change over here, I'm going to get a value over here which will be a number, and this I'm going to update this value to this selected category ID. But we have to keep in mind that in this we have to update the value over here. So this will be ID, not name. So value will be ID, and every time whenever we are going to make the change, this value will be passed to this, and this will be updated to this selected category ID. The small change before testing this out is that we have to pass this categories, because we have passed this as an object to our categories. So I can close all other files. So let's check our add new subcategory method first. So here I have to rename this as subcategory, and in the TS file as well I have to rename this as subcategory, and here I can see that I have called add subcategory from the service, right? So this I have to update and add the category ID as well, right? So let's do that. This will be category ID, and this value will be this dot selected category ID, and here I have to make sure that the category ID is default selected as well, right? So let's do that. So here also, like if I have this categories dot length, then what I have to do, I have to update both this dot category ID, which will be this dot categories 0 of ID, right? And same goes for category. So category will be name. We can do that. We can by default select the first one, and now this is time to test it out. So let's do that. So here, once I click on the add new category, I can update the ID for this one, or we will keep it 0 because we don't have any subcategory right now. So we can keep it like, and I will add something in the clothing. I will add men, and I will add a random image. So once I save it, I can see that the data is updated in the table. And now I will add a new subcategory, whose ID will be 1, and subcategory will be electronics, and name will be music, and image I can add random images, and let's save this. So once I save this, I can see that the recently added is not listed in this table. So now we have to add some method on the change of this category over here, so that this API will be called again with this particular ID. So let's first close all the files and open the admin subcategory component.ts, and in this we have to add the trigger over here as well. So let's do that. So again, I'm going to add that selection change, and on selection change I'm going to say category change, right? So let's do that, category change, and this method I have to define again in our TS file. And from here we have to again pass that event dot value, and in this method we have to take the value which will be number. So this value we have to update in our selected ID. So let's do that, selected ID is equals to value, and then after this we have to call this dot get subcategories method, and this subcategories well method will be called with this new updated selected category, right? Let's try out. Before that we have to check if the value is updated properly or not. So this should be ID. So on the output, once we select any particular category, the values in the table will be updated according to that. And you can do the same, and you can add multiple subcategories and check for each subcategory from this. And rest of the things of editing and deleting will remain same as the category one, and the same relationship will be built between the subcategory and the product. So each subcategory will have some product, so product should have a subcategory ID in it, and that is your homework to do. You can do that and check your understanding as well. So in the next video, we are going to create some advanced features in this admin panel. And thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button before leaving. Happy coding everyone. See you in the next video.